everyone. Good evening. We are so glad that you're here this evening. This is a small group, and we are recording this as well, so if there's any pieces of wisdom that you couldn't get exactly, we will, tomorrow or Thursday, send out the recording along with this PowerPoint presentation because it has several links on it, and an invitation to join SCORE, which is our college admissions search and application tool that we'll be talking about a little bit later. So my name is Lisa Dubriel. I'm one of the directors of college counseling here at Moravian Academy. I've been working here at Moravian for 14 years, and before that at 2 institutions in college admissions. So wow, 29 years in this field. I'm old. That's all I feel is old when I say 29 years, but it's been a wonderful career, and especially working at Moravian Academy with all of your wonderful students. We have also had the pleasure this month meeting with many of you already in our junior family college meetings, and I hope that you found them helpful, a helpful tool so that your sons and daughters and you can move forward with this process with a little bit more information. Mrs. Shaughnessy is going to be talking about this a little bit later, but we start junior seminar on Wednesday, February 8th with your students. So we're looking forward to getting to know them a little bit better. So this profession, while it is incredibly wonderful and it's an incredible profession, it's also become more challenging in recent years. College admissions has become unwieldy in terms of acceptance rates at some of the most selected colleges in the country, and fortunately, our students are students who are in the conversation at many of those most selected colleges and universities in the country. I think what's become difficult for us is that our job is to facilitate and to educate, and a lot of it is shifting families to think, hopefully, certainly, but also realistically. So that's our job. We support students in sending out any application that they wish to send out, but our job is also to be realistic as well. Your students are phenomenal people. 100% of the time in our time at Moravian, all students have landed somewhere wonderful. And students, as long as they embrace it, utilize the resources that are available to them, have wonderful experiences at their places of higher education. So I'm also blessed to be this year's 12th grade dean. So I connect with our 12th graders quite a bit individually and in a group. And in a group today, we had class meeting today, and I had a little contest. I had some candy. And it wasn't really a contest, but I really wanted students to participate, and I knew the candy would have them participate. So I asked students, I said, hey, we're having a junior parent college night tonight, so we're only talking to the junior parents. What advice would you give the parents now that you're sort of ending this process with your family, this college admissions process? And the theme was very clear. Listen to me. Listen to me, the student. Your dreams aren't necessarily my dreams. Your college fit isn't necessarily my college fit. A lot of families asked, and this is a great question, what can I do to support my child moving forward in this process? Is there anything I can do to help? So there's a bunch of things, but the most important thing is to love them and to listen to them. They all have dreams and ideas and places that they think might be good fits for them. Listen to them, hear them, allow them to be them. Secondly, the other big thing that and Mrs. Shaughnessy will probably talk a little bit about this too. I keep taking some of the things you're going to talk about.
It's not better coming from you.
No. So we're going to send out a parent questionnaire in SCORE. So definitely log in, and you're going to have a chance to brag about your son or daughter. That's one of the things I mentioned to some of you in family meetings as well, is students don't necessarily feel comfortable yet bragging about themselves, advocating for themselves. And so you're going to have a chance to share your brags about how wonderful your sons and daughters are. So we ask you several open-ended questions, and 100% of the time, we have used the information from those questionnaires to help to write our counselor recommendations. So those are incredibly helpful. So to save paper, again, we don't have anything to hand out to you this evening. You'll get all of it online, and hopefully those will be good resources for you. So next, I would like to introduce, I would like to introduce Susan Stiefel, who is currently a director of admissions at Lafayette College. Just a little bit of background on Susan. She was born and raised in Canada. Susan graduated from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and completed graduate studies in North Carolina. She spent several years teaching overseas in international schools in Switzerland, Madagascar, Thailand, Ethiopia, and Sri Lanka, and is currently working at Lafayette College and is a part-time adjunct professor at Northampton Community College. In addition, she is also the proud parent of William Moravian Academy class of 16 and Lizzie Moravian Academy class of 19. And she's going to share her wisdom as an admissions person and as a parent of former Moravian Academy students. Susan.
All right, well, you asked me to do more parent perspective because I could go on and on about admissions stuff, but I'm pleased to be here as your warm-up act for the fabulous Dubreuil and Shaughnessy performance tonight. I was asked to kind of just share my parent perspective. If my husband was here, I guarantee it would be very different. My husband is very calm. I was one of those parents. I distinctly remember my very first email to Mrs. Shaughnessy was, can you explain how our students get into college because we don't have class ranks? I was serious. I had been on College Confidential. Do not go on College Confidential. I stressed myself out. So this was before I started in admissions. It was new, it was exciting, and then it got very stressful. I was the type of parent who, when my son William was 13 and a half months old in a playgroup, was the last toddler walking, and I was convinced he would not walk. And my husband said, he's not going to roll to kindergarten. He will, in fact, probably walk. And he did. So my husband has a very much calming influence on us. As you mentioned, William graduated in 2016. He graduated from Davidson College in 2020. He got married last summer to the love of his life with some wonderful Moravian and Davidson friends flying to California to be guests and in the wedding party. He and his wife wanted adventure, so they are currently teaching at an American international school in Abuja, Nigeria. He's teaching AP courses, she is teaching 3rd grade, and they're teaching children of diplomats and NGO and business directors. He was not a spectacular, so I have 2 very different children. William, I know this is being recorded, and he'll probably watch this. They did give permission for me to share all of this. He was not a spectacular student in the first 2 years at Moravian. He was what we could call an absent-minded professor. It's not that he didn't want to do homework, he could not find the homework in the black hole of his backpack. So many teachers said his grade would be much higher if he could do homework. He was really good at testing, that whole homework piece, so that was a bit of a challenge. It clicked before junior year. He ended up at Davidson, so I'm saying it all worked out. You're fine. My daughter, on the other hand, she was very organized, very with it, focused. She graduated in 2019, but then she wanted to take a gap year. So she took a gap year before gap years were cool, before COVID. She lived in Senegal for a year on a US Department of State fully funded program. And then she attended high school there, like a high school in French in Wolof, lived with a family there. She's now a junior at the University of Notre Dame, and just got back from a fall semester in Copenhagen, so she's launched as well. You had asked me to talk more about the role of this. So how did we start? What was our role? Our first role in our family was the money talk. This is a $300,000 decision. And we had to talk about family finances in our family. One of the first things we did was the net price calculator. And as an admissions person, this is what I say as well. Every college, if you Google net price calculator and the name of the college, something either called NPC or something will come up where you can put in your information and get an idea. Because what you think you can afford and what the college thinks you might be able to afford could be two very different things. And it's good to know, to have that idea in advance. We were also, not we, my children were chasing merit. That was very important to us, so that added another layer. Another role for us was keeping them on a track with deadlines, in consultation, in collaboration with these wonderful women, because often merit deadlines come before admissions deadlines or application deadlines, so that's something to think about as well. They were responsible for choosing colleges that they wished to tour, and also scheduling interviews. We did all the travel prep. We did the hotels, the transportation. Interview prep. Okay, so our children, it wasn't optional. If a college that they wanted to go to offered an interview, we told them basically that was required. It was another opportunity to share something about themselves. So it's important to have some time. We had things like, tell me about yourself. What are your passions? Why do you want to go to this college? Think about that when you're on the spot and you're 17 years old, trying to figure out how you're going to answer that succinctly. Sometimes it worked, a lot of the time. Sometimes though, calling out Colby College, gave William a question about if you were a beaver, what kind of like dam would you build? And he had no idea, to this day, he has no idea what that question was asking. I think he was just like, whatever, I don't know. In the first round of merit at Davidson, another example was, this was a good one. You would think with a merit they would get into different things. They spent most of the time asking him about his, what he learned at Wegmans. He had been working at Wegmans since the age of 15, and for whatever reason, that was where the conversation led, and it worked out. He made it to the second round, eventually got a merit scholarship there, so that wasn't, he was really comfortable talking about Wegmans, so that worked out well. Lizzie, this is my ultimate story. At Denison, she went in for an interview with a student interviewer. She came out and she had this really awkward smile on her face. She said, thank you. We leave, we start walking down the stairs, and she says, Mom, did Jane Austen write Pride and Prejudice? And I'm like, what? And she said, she asked me, like, any person, living or dead, that you want to have a meal with, who would that be? And she said, I totally blanked, could not think of a single person on earth that I would have a meal with, but somehow the bowels of my body came out and I said, Jane Austen. She said, and then of course the follow-up question is, why, what would you talk about? To make this even worse, it turned out the student interviewer was an English major, and so asked her, what was your favorite novel? And she said, Pride and Prejudice. And then, but she does have a skill that I wish I had. She's very good about a lot of word salad stuff. So she talked about connections and themes, and she said it made no sense, but then she diverted it to what she wanted to talk about. And yeah, she did get into Denison, she did get a scholarship, it worked out, but sometimes you just don't know what happens with those things. So we encourage them to work on applications for likelies and for matches first. So sometimes you think you want to work on those reaches. For our kids, we felt it was important. They really needed to put effort into the colleges where they would most likely get accepted. They applied to about 10 to 12 colleges each. William's strength was not in writing, and he ended up with about 20 essays, and he was dead tired by the end. Lizzie, whose strength is writing, she had it by the end too. We counted at the end of hers 31 essays, 3 peer recs, and 14 interviews over the course of that time. You get tired writing about yourself, and they were pretty tired. We also were a sounding board for their thoughts. So William, as if you haven't guessed, is a little bit more introverted, more reserved. This process forces students to share a lot of personal stuff with strangers, and he was really at times uncomfortable. All the essays, all the the interviews, the application questions. You mentioned not wanting to brag, and he just didn't feel that was him. We had to have that conversation about sharing your accomplishments, but at the same time doing it in a way that doesn't sound braggy. Lizzie, on the other hand, started talking beginning of senior year about wanting to have a break. And so we said, that's fine, you research it. We're not paying for a gap year. If you find something that you can pay, but our rule was that you had to that you had to apply to colleges, you had to accept and enroll, and then ask for a leave rather than doing it while you're overseas. And again, that worked out. Trying to find that balance between letting them be responsible for things and then also kind of stepping in to recommend or guide, and what you want or what your child wants can change very, very quickly. So another quick story going into senior year, again, I just want to share my husband, very calm. This was one time, he's always been the good cop. This is one time he wasn't. Going into senior year, William had a solid list. Suddenly began to start thinking about seemingly random colleges and wanting to add them to his list. Brandeis University, fantastic university. It just seemed really random. And then one evening at dinner, it came out, his girlfriend was trying to do D3 swimming, and they decided they were going to go to college together, and this was the way they were going to go together. I thought it was really romantic. My husband flipped his lid and was like, no, you're not going to base your college choice on your girlfriend in high school. There's a lot of conversations. They ended up breaking up, sadly. I really liked her by the end of senior year, so it all worked out. You just never know. So I'm just saying things happen in your children's lives beyond college as they're growing. Keeping our cool. This was more William. When he seemed disinterested on college tours or not as interested as I was, our first tour was University of Richmond. Loved University of Richmond. It was shiny and it was fun and there was a great presentation. Our tour guide was all peppy and I'm like, I want to go here. We get in the car and I'm like, what do you think? How was it? He goes, it was okay. I'm like, no. Like, can you see yourself here? Like, is this the moment? And he was like, it was fine. Yeah, that was really irritating. Don't ask for feedback. Sometimes right after the tour, let them have some time to think. For some of them, maybe days later. Don't give opinions or pushback. He gave us, when we were annoyed one time, Phil and Claire Dunphy from The Modern Family, because we were annoying. So sometimes he would call me Claire or my husband Phil when we were pushing a little too much. How we decided to get involved, again, we're letting them take most of the balance at this point. One thing, this is a little while ago, because I know there's a lot of colleges like ours are test optional, then it wasn't. So SAT prep was that $29 blue Amazon book and free mom yelling, and they did their SAT prep. That was non-negotiable. They had to do it, especially chasing merit at that point. That's probably not as appropriate or needed now, but just wanted to share that. It's a lot of yelling. Essays were theirs. We never saw their Common App. They learned to trust Mrs. Shaughnessy and Mrs. Jubriel. They knew them well. They helped them through deadlines. One of them referred to them as pressure valves that help reduce the pressure, which is very sweet, your pressure valve. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Our role in helping them decide, because they made that good foundational list at first, it was up to them at the end. It was 100% their decision. I asked Lizzie and William their advice today. So, Lizzie, advice to parents. Help your kids start thinking about balance and what they want out of college. Share your life perspective and experience balancing work, family, and fun. Sometimes students get caught in a tunnel vision. She wanted a really good academic college, but also wanted really to have a lot of fun. I don't know what. I want to know what kind of fun she's having at Notre Dame. Don't want to know, but apparently she has found, she said, that balance. William said, try to reduce your child's stress. Lots of classmates were so stressed about college and grades, it was not helped by the parents. He met me. He sees that now from the perspective of a high school teacher. He shared that Moravian has great outcomes and a wonderful counseling team that helps students succeed. Most of his Moravian friends are on paths they didn't expect back as juniors and are happy. So I like that. Wrapping up. Specific advice, things like trying to make one time per week to talk about college. I tended to embed a lot of about college anytime they were around. I think it's something I tell them. I learned to take notes, and then once a week we have a little 15-minute mom college chat time and go through that. That was very helpful. Realize your son or daughter may be very stressed but not showing it. These are things that my children shared. They were stressed about moving away from home, thinking constantly about changes, like leaving friends, people constantly asking about colleges, where they're applying, and their college decision. They were stressed about making the right decision, about making us proud, still having time to do their regular schoolwork, having time to do extracurriculars, having time for social time, downtime, and they may be thinking they said a lot about it, and by the time we want to talk about it, they're just tired of thinking about it. In the end, I just want to end with recognize how difficult this whole process can be, provide more TLC, let your son and daughter know how proud you are of him or her before, during, and after decisions come out. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. So I'm Kyle Shaughnessy. I'm the other half of this awesome team. I have been at Moravian for 11 years. I also am going to be the head lacrosse coach this year. I did it before I had my first daughter, gave it up for a little bit, and I got the itch to go back. I miss it, I love it, so I will be doing that as well. It's a great way for me to connect. I love the camaraderie and teamwork that is created through that. So that's a little bit about me. Also, I was in college admissions at 2 other institutions prior to coming to Moravian as well. So yeah, there's a lot of time involved in that. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about junior seminar, which we love because it's easy, it's relaxed. Did you know that all of your juniors are going to California? Did you know that? That's what we learn in junior seminar. And then they do the kind of introspection and realization of, oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to get a storage unit. Oh yeah, it costs a lot of money to fly back and forth. So there's a lot of thought and process that goes into this, but we will actually begin junior seminar on Wednesday, February 8th, and it will be built into their schedule once in their Comenius cycle. And we just enjoy the journey of self-discovery. And so we're gonna talk about every single step of the process in small groups. We are really excited that we kind of front-loaded the junior family meetings. So I think all of you, by the time we start junior seminar, will have your college list. We will have had this introductory conversation. And so part of what we are going to do is use SCORE. And so that is our online tool where we will help students kind of explore that college list through SCORE. What does it look like to follow a school, to then consider applying to a school? We are going to show them something called scattergrams, which is a little bit in a vacuum of information, but it allows them to see past Moravian Academy information of students that have applied to those institutions that they're considering. What were their they don't have any names, they don't have any information, but they do have some numbers and scores, and they can see, okay, what were some of the outcomes? Where do I fall in this? So it gives them a little bit of context. You also will have access to this, as Mrs. Dubriel said, and it's something that you can play around with as well on your kind of parent SCORE user name as you kind of log in. We also started with them preparing an activity list, a resume. Some of them have already created their full resume and have been sending them to summer programs, have been applying for jobs and using that as well. So we are going to hone that in as well, and we'll help them create that so that they have an outline and can see, wow, I really did accomplish a lot through my kind of 2.5-ish years at Moravian, and that includes information of things that they did at Moravian and then also within their communities as well. When we begin the Common application, that becomes really helpful for them as well. So in junior seminar, we are also going to start the first part of the Common application, which is their basic family history. They will also include 10 activities that they feel are most important to them that highlight who they are and what they really love to do. And so we will talk to them through, you know, what could you put on there? Some of them have more than 10, and that's okay. We'll talk them through where they can include that on the application as well. But again, we are trying to front load a lot of this, so as they come back into their senior year, they're not overwhelmed with having to do every single step of this process. So this is kind of a really nice thing for them. We're also going to use that college list to talk about how do you research schools. Let's go on some websites and find out what is important to you. One of the questions that we asked on the college guidance questionnaire is what are the 3 most important things you want out of your college experience? And so they highlighted some things that are important. So we're gonna talk to them about when they go on websites, how do you sift through that information and find out how do I tell the culture of a school, and are they doing the things that are important to me? Is it networking? Is it internships? Is it research? So how can you find those things? And we're going to walk through that as well. We'll also talk through campus visits. And if the pandemic gave students applying to schools one positive thing, it would be that they became really creative with the way they not only market their schools, but offer you virtual visit options. And so this is exciting as you start to navigate through the websites and say, oh, I think I kind of like this a little bit. Do a virtual info session and tour. Wow, do I still like what I'm seeing? All right, we're gonna commit to visit this school in person because I really do like it. So it allows you to be a really informed consumer. And so one of the things that I also recommend, and they always ask, like, what should we do when we're on campus? There's a couple things I definitely recommend. You as parents are much more confident going up to a student and saying, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about your school? Why did you choose it? Are you still happy here? Is it still the same place that you thought? We tell them, let your parents do that, right? Let them, don't be embarrassed by it, let them do it. Eat a meal there. Sit down, don't be super creepy, but like kind of listen in on conversations. What are they talking about? Is it like, wow, the Rage Cage party? Or is it like, oh, this philosophical conversation or my research or my internship? What are they talking about? Read the school newspaper. Those are really cool things that you can learn a lot about the culture of the place. And if you can't find the school newspaper present somewhere, that might tell you something too. Are they hiding it? Did admissions like steal all of them and say, we don't want people to know what's going on? And you might be able to find a digital version online. So those are really cool things to learn about some of the culture of the place. And so we tell them those things. Interviews, as Susan said, we also offer mock interview opportunities, and so students will also kind of role play with each other as well in junior seminar, and it just allows them to be comfortable, again, answering those questions. Why this place? What do I want someone to know about me? And we walk them through some strategies about coming up with how to have those conversations and how to tell people about themselves. We will also start writing the Common App essay, which is really helpful for students. We've also teamed up with the English department. So in English classes towards the end of the year, after APs are over, they will start writing their college essay as well. So we will brainstorm essay topics with them, and we also critique past Moravian Academy essays that we thought were particularly strong in the process. And so students will read them, and sometimes they're pretty tough on them. You know, I didn't like this, I felt like I didn't learn enough about that. But they start to understand what is important and what goes into writing a really successful Common App essay. So again, kind of front-loading all of this so that they're not as stressed as they come back in their senior year. All right, and we talked a little bit about that questionnaire, why it's important. It's a great jumping off point for them. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is, who are you? And we discussed a little bit about this. And some of the things that I think happen when families start thinking about schools is they sometimes focus more on the name and the selectivity of the place than they do rather the student that's conducting the research. So again, as I think the theme that you're going to start hearing is listen to your student, right? Listen to what they want. It's about finding fit, not necessarily the name of the school. And it's a fit of each individual student. We also tell students, try and put your blinders on. It's really hard not to compare yourself to other people. It's also really hard not to hear what other people are doing and where they're applying and why they're applying there. It really is an individual process. And so one of the key things that we will say, and they will get so sick of hearing us say it, is wherever you go, it's not where you go, it's what you do when you're there. And so that's something that we will constantly say to students over and over again. And so through this process, we just try to help them be introspective about what they're looking for and helping them kind of dissect some schools that will be a really good fit for them and help feed their souls. There's a lot of info out there. It can certainly seem overwhelming. As you navigate this process, think about this. The student should remain authentic and true to themselves as they choose their courses, as they choose extracurricular activities, contributions to school and community, as they prepare for standardized tests. It needs to be about them, not everybody else. And so that's something that we keep talking to them because college admissions officers are pretty savvy, right? They've done this most of them have done this for a really long time. And so they can see through when a student isn't being authentic to who they are, right? And so everything needs to kind of, mean, not everything needs to have a theme, but it does need to make sense that if I am interested in business, I might have some courses that are involved in business. I might have courses that, or summer programs that are involved in that. So again, this kind of theme that's showing who I am and what I've done, right? One of the things that we say all the time too is trying to predict what a college wants is a losing proposition. Do what you love instead of thinking, what do others want to see me do? Whenever students come to me and say, will this look good on a college application? I'm like, no. Do you love doing it? Is it something that's really awesome? Is it exciting to you? If you don't like community service, do the 40 hours of community service and move on to something that you do love, right? It's all about finding what's true to you and what do you enjoy doing, okay? All right, I think that's all for me for now. I'm gonna turn back over to my partner.
So all of you who've had family meetings received a preliminary college list, and it's preliminary, right? I mean, as Susan said, students change their minds. It is a process, not a done deal, right? So what we're doing now with students is helping them to take that list, explore it, and really define, as Mrs. Shaughnessy talked about, what characteristics are most important to them. And that's primarily what we did when we were building each student's list. So we took the student's college guidance questionnaire, we looked at their parameters, we looked at their academic record to date, any standardized testing that we had, contributions to school and community, and then we built a tiered list based on that record as it stands, and also, as we mentioned, it's an aspirational list, meaning the list isn't really going to change in terms of which schools do I have the best chance of getting admitted to. You see the tiers, you see the grades and the scores if you're going to be sending your scores, but the list itself might change. But you have that preliminary list and students get to do their exploration with it and build as they go. So what we've created here is just sort of some schools that have similar characteristics in different tiers of selectivity. So here's a DNA strand of liberal arts, smaller, undergraduate focus. God, I hope I put Lafayette on there. Phew, I did. College town strand, right? So Princeton, Dartmouth, Duke, super selective, single-digit acceptance rate. Now, this is what we're saying about admissions becoming pretty unwieldy. This is a strand by tier of selectivity. Pomona, Middlebury, and Bowdoin have moved up to the same tier as Princeton, Dartmouth, and Duke. They too have single-digit acceptance rates. Davidson, Bucknell, Colgate, Lafayette. Colgate and Davidson are probably up a little bit in terms of selectivity. Bucknell and Lafayette, there's a reason why they're a little bit more of targets for our students, partly because it's sort of a regional thing. They're both in Pennsylvania. We have strong relationships with them. We send a number of students there. And then Dickinson, Denison, Wheaton, and the College of New Jersey. All of these are high quality institutions. We are trying to tell our students that you don't just look at the ones in that first tier of selectivity and say, those are the ones I want to attend. They all offer very similar experiences. They're all wonderful places. So we ask you and your students to open your minds to look at some places that you'd never heard of before. You just said, your daughter came home. Now Bates is in that uber selective range. It doesn't really matter though, right? Because your daughter came home and said, I love Bates. I want to go to Bates. And this is the older daughter that actually went to Bates. And you were like, where, Bates? Well, tell me a little bit more about it, I've never heard of it. Open your mind to different places, regardless of selectivity, because she found her fit.
And she didn't get into Bowdoin.
And she didn't get into Bowdoin, but she's perfectly happy and wonderful and working at Woods Hole, right? Awesome. Research-oriented urban strand, Penn, Harvard, Stanford, and all those second-tier ones in terms of selectivity have moved up into that single-digit acceptance rate. University of Southern California, we just got statistics from this year. They received 40,000 applications in early action alone. They've received 45,000 more in regular decision. Their early action acceptance rate was 6%. My guess is their overall acceptance rate, once they finish, will be about 8%. So that, you just have to think realistically.
The same with University of Miami. I just got off a webinar with them. In early decision and early action, they received 50,000 applications. And so they are being selective with their early decision and not admitting as many students. They went pretty heavy in early action, but they do want to make sure that in early action and regular decision, they had about 60% of the class left to fill, but 50,000 in EA and early decision combined.
So, and these statistics aren't meant to scare you at all. We have a lot of knowledge and information about these schools. We ask that you open your mind and you listen to us, because it's not about the child not being able to do the work at any of these places. They would thrive at most of these places. It's more, if you like this school, you really should put this school on your list because it has similar characteristics and you have a better chance of admission. Liberal-minded, less structured, meaning more of an open curriculum. Brown, Swarthmore, Haverford, same thing with those others in that second level. Wesleyan, Vassar, Carleton, Reed, Oberlin. I would say probably Reed and Oberlin aren't as the single digits, but Wesleyan, Vassar, and Carleton are. Connecticut College, Skidmore, McAllister, Grinnell, awesome choices. Students just need to think, could I go to Iowa, right? College of Worcester, awesome place. Guilford, Hendricks, Hampshire, really cool, creative places. You can get just as good an education at College of Worcester as you could at Brown. And they have these really awesome snow traditions there too. I don't know, there's fun stuff to do at College of Worcester. Large flagship strand, UNC, Chapel Hill, UVA, Michigan, Cal Berkeley, UCLA, Uber Selective, Georgia Tech, William & Mary, University of Florida, Texas. I would probably still put them in a second tier, not as uber selective as those ones in the first tier. Wisconsin, Illinois, Penn State, UConn, Rutgers, Delaware, and then UNH, UMass, Indiana, Alabama. Very similar experiences in terms of that balance of academics and student life, and size, and offerings, and relationships with students and professors, and go team, rah, rah, rah. The colors may be different on your face when you go to the game, but other than that, these are very similar experiences. And then how many? A lot of families, parents ask that question too. And it depends. It very much depends on, as the student is curating their list, where those schools fall in terms of selectivity. A student can't apply to all schools in that first tier of selectivity. No matter what kind of student you are, you can't do that. When you have a 3, 4, 5% acceptance rate, that's taking too much of a chance. So we just need to make sure that a student has a balanced list of schools. And if they say, if we look at their list and we say, okay, these two, you're pretty likely to get admitted. If what happens at the end of this process is you're only admitted to those two, other than initially being disappointed because you weren't admitted to other institutions, would you feel happy going to one of these two places? If they say, yeah, absolutely, I love it. In fact, this one's my second choice. Great, your list is done, and it might be 4 or 5 schools. If we're present the same situation to another student and they say, oh my gosh, I don't really feel comfortable with that. Well, first of all, maybe those 2 schools shouldn't be on their list, because every school on a student's list should be one that they would ultimately attend if admitted. But then we have to go back to the drawing board, make sure that the student and the family feels comfortable with the ultimate list of schools that they're applying to. And to hope for the best, but be realistic about the possible results. So as I mentioned, if you can't answer the question, why us? If you're thinking, I don't know why this school is on my list, then it shouldn't be on your list. And students will be asked that question quite a bit in supplemental essays. So if a student comes to us and says, I have no idea what to write here, well, either you do some research about why it matches you, or take it off your list. And then this is this is a process for students as well. I just had a senior come to me, and mid-year grades are coming out in a few days. She's very stressed out. She has a grade on her transcript that she really doesn't like, and she's just incredibly stressed out. And I feel so horribly that that's what happens to our students. There's not necessarily a way to avoid it. Parents love them, give them lots of support. On our end, we just have to reassure them that they're going to end up someplace great. And this student is so incredible that whatever lucky place gets her, she's going to just light it on fire. She's amazing. Mrs. Shaughnessy.
Okay, oh, I love that you clap in between everyone, that's so nice. It just, makes us feel good. Okay, so evaluating applications, points to consider. All right, I'm gonna give you some more numbers here. 3,511 colleges on the College Board search tool. 86 of them accept less than 25% of students. If you go up to 50% acceptance rates, there are 353. So those are tiny numbers, right? And there are people from all over the world applying to these places. We seem to focus on those kind of smaller numbers, the 83 schools, but there's so many great places, and so that's what I think we want to keep hammering home. We're going to provide a link at the end for an article that says "End the Craziness of College Admissions," and it's a good read. Some of the things that I particularly pulled out, if you focus on only the most selective colleges in the country, the news usually isn't good. You may think that it won't be your child. Unfortunately, the odds are it will be. Especially when we're talking about example schools with 10% acceptance rate. This means that 90% will not be admitted. So those are conversations that we need to have and be realistic, and that's why we keep hammering home this balanced list. The article also explains that lifelong curiosity and making use of the resources available to you predicts success far more than does the selectivity of the college. We also recommend a book. It's called Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, and it's by Frank Bruni. It is fantastic, and it is true. We encourage you all to read it. All right, nitty-gritty, here we go. At schools that review applications holistically, so what does that mean, holistic review? It means that every single piece that you present to the college will be looked at and reviewed and scoured over, and they will dig deep into that, who you are and what you're presenting to them. Some of the large state school flagship institutions that Mrs. Dureal talked about before, they are going to kind of use a little bit of an algorithm and sort of say, okay, where do you fall? GPA, SAT scores, if you're sending them, do you make it to main campus, or do we think maybe another campus might be best for you for right now? So I'm going to talk specifically about the holistic review. 3 main pieces to the puzzle, and if you had your family meeting, we kind of went over this a little bit. Academic profile, which includes GPA, rigor of the individual student's curriculum, in context to who that student is, right? So when we send transcripts to schools, we include the Moravian Academy profile, which gives them historical context of our institution, of how many students go on to college, of the courses that are offered when they were able to take advantage of them. And so they want to see, is this a challenging curriculum and schedule for that individual student, right? So it's going to be different student to student. Standardized testing, if that's a part of your story, if they are indicative of who you are as a student and it's something you want to share, that can be part of what is reviewed as well. And then contributions to school life and community, which includes extracurricular activities and leadership. Some schools do rank activities and leadership, and are you captain, are you president? They kind of give it a scoring base. We can't control how they review. What students can control is what they share, what they love, what they get involved in, and how deeply they get involved in those things. And so telling that story through essays, through really thinking about, as I want to share the important pieces of who I am, writing about that stuff that was just really important to them allows the human component to come out. As we were kind of talking through these numbers, the large majority of students that are applying to some of these most selective schools in the country are absolutely admissible. They could admit students over and over and over again by the number of applications that they're receiving. But so it's allowing those essays kind of tell them who you are and how you will impact their community, right? Your activities tell them what you'll do when you step foot on their campus. And so selective admissions is just that. They get to select the class that will make up, you know, the next people that are going to impact their community and environment. Letters of recommendation, we say this to students all of the time. Who you are in the classroom makes a really big difference in that teachers are going to have to advocate for you. And you want to think about what's the relationship that I've created with my teachers. Have I been interactive in class? Have I been a leader in class? Am I someone that likes to observe and then give a point of view at a specific time? All of those things are okay. You don't have to be the person that raises their hand and talks every single time, but you do need to be engaged. You do need to be a supportive classmate. And so those are things that teachers are going to start writing about and talking about. They are going to ask their teachers for letters of recommendation starting in the spring, and we will talk them through who to ask, when to ask, why to ask, all of those things. So we're going to talk through that. Mrs. Dubriel and I also write letters of recommendations for students. And so we are using this time to get to know them, to really share who they are across in school, out of school. It's a comprehensive letter that we write for them as well, so that schools, again, can see the type of impact that they would have within their communities. And then interest in the college and community. Some schools do track demonstrated interest. As we are going through students' lists with them, we can talk to them about which schools do track demonstrated interest, which schools want you to be on their campuses, and which schools say, visit, don't visit, doesn't matter to us. You know, we just want to know who you are, right? And that would be through the application. All right, so standardized tests and college counseling. College testing calendar, So junior spring is a rough time for students, especially if testing is going to be a part of their story. They've already had the PSAT, they took that in October. Now it's time for the SAT or the ACT. We do encourage students to sit for both, try it out. Nobody sees those scores if you don't want them to. So it's a nice way to get a sense of which exam is a better fit for me, which one do I like, and then I will spend that time. If I haven't already been doing prep, I'm going to spend my energy prepping for that specific exam. In this climate, we are encouraging our student population to sit for the exam and see if it is going to be a part of your story. But we do think every student should have an exam, at least have tried to go through that process with the exams. They will also be taking AP exams in May, and then their finals as well. So this gets like heavy for them. There are many ways to prepare for the SAT or ACT. It can be buying the Barnes & Noble or Amazon book. It can also be using the free tool on the College Board website or going on to Khan Academy, which is a really great tool. But students need to be smart about the type of learner they are. Are they an independent learner that they can set, in their calendar, this is going to be my SAT, ACT prep schedule, and will I stick to it? Can I listen to mom as mom nags me to say, get them, do your work, or is it, I need to report to a test prep person. I need someone that's going to motivate me and encourage me. Both are fine. It's just who are you as a student and which one's going to be a better fit for you. And there's a variety of different price points when it comes to individual test prep as well. And we can certainly have conversations with you about that. March is a good time to take the SAT for the first time, ACT in April, so that kind of gives you a base, and then you can move from there, whether it's going to be I'm going to use the rest of my spring to kind of focus on my academics, because here's the thing. Once your grades are set, your grades are set. Right now, don't let test prep interfere with your academic performance and really doing the best you can to finish out this junior year, because they're going to complete their cumulative GPA at the end of this year. Okay. I already said that, never mind, I'm so good. Okay, that's optional. Here we go, test optional. How important are tests are dependent upon the college, and so many schools have already sent out notifications saying that they will remain test optional for the 23-24 application year. Fairtest.org will track all of that information, so you can use that to see which schools are going to remain test optional, and there's a ton of schools on that list. Sending scores can be a case-by-case basis. Again, we will advise students as you go through the application process. You might want to send your scores to this school, but you know what, we're going to hold them back on this one because either you're not in that mid 50% range or we just don't think it's going to support your candidacy the same way that we would hope it would. Okay. Yeah, I think that we've said all of that. Okay. So SCORE, we talked about SCORE. It's our online counseling tool. Your children have been using it. They're going to navigate it a little bit more. And in senior year, it's going to be, we're going to call it the mothership. All of their information as far as the schools that they're applying to and the schools that they have applied to need to be on SCORE. And we will show them that, talk to them. Because if we don't have that information on SCORE, one, we can't help them keep track of deadlines, and two, we don't know when to send their supporting documents to the schools that they've applied to. So that's a really big, important piece, and you'll, again, have access to it. You will be able to see those scattergrams that I kind of talked about. You'll be able to navigate, again, that parent questionnaire, which is really helpful. That information is already in there, so when we share the login information, we ask that if you could have it completed by the summer, that would be great. So by the end of the school year, tell us about your children from your point of view. It, again, really helps us kind of bring your voice into their letter of recommendation. Financial aid. This, when we talk about student role, parent role, counselor role, financial aid is really parent, family role. It is very, very important for you to have very open and honest conversations about what that looks like for you and your family. It plays a part in deciding whether you're going to apply early decision to a school. And so early decision is a binding process. You're saying to that school, I love you so much, I want to marry you. If I'm admitted, I am 100% withdrawing all of my other applications, saying bye to all those other schools, excuse me, bye to all those other schools, and I will commit and go to this school, right? What you do in early decision is that you waive your right, if you're admitted to that school in early decision, you waive your right to review financial aid and scholarship packages at other institutions. So that could be a really big part of your process. And as Susan was saying, their students needed to get merit as part of their financial aid package and part of that. So again, it needs to be part of the conversation to know if that's what your family needs your students to do. And we, of course, can have some of those conversations about, we think you might be a strong candidate for merit at this particular institution. So again, it can be case-by-case basis. All right. We have a cursory knowledge of financial aid, but paying and affording for college is definitely on you as the family. Determine which requirements are required for each school. Most private institutions will require both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Prior tax returns will be used, so you can input stuff on the net price calculator, on the CSS and FAFSA information. It becomes live October 1st. And this is something we're going to remind you of. We will also have a financial aid night, but also something to keep in mind about deadlines. The #1 reason families do not receive financial aid that qualify for it is because they miss a deadline. So it's just really important to be on top of that process. All right, and scholarships, there's a ton of search engines. We can provide some of our favorites. It does require a lot of legwork. Sometimes it feels like for little return, but some of it can certainly start to add up after a while.
This is just sort of a public service announcement. We talked a little bit about students feeling anxious, and as you know, with the pandemic, there's been a pandemic of mental health issues among our teenagers, and increasing stress academically can cause problems with academic integrity. And so hopefully you know and your students know that our teachers, our counselors, our mentors, staff at this academy are incredibly supportive and understanding. And so if a student is feeling that pressure and is feeling, I'm not going to get this done, or I have nothing written, it's better to talk to the teacher about it, take a little ding in their grade for it being late, rather than a 0 and being reported for academic dishonesty. So something that students should really have at the forefront of their mind: we are supportive, we will help if there are any issues where students are feeling especially stressed out. Okay? And then just sort of a couple of final thoughts. You know, we're a team. I hope I said that a lot in our family meetings. I really feel like it's sort of a three-pronged team: parents, student, counselor. And I know how you feel. You want the absolute best for your son or daughter. We feel that way too. We come to love these students as well. So know that we're on your side and we want the best for them as we work together. They're going to receive some negative decisions, no doubt. And it's hard to get those when they've worked so incredibly hard, and they question themselves. Could I have written something different? Should I have gotten a different grade? Should I have done this activity? It's hard not to second guess themselves. They should be celebrated for who they are, and the right college or university will recognize and admit them. In August, we will have a non-athletic preseason, an admissions preseason. I don't know. Anyway, it's before school starts. We won't do any jogging or jumping jacks, but we will review their common application, and we will talk about their essay and where they are with them, so that when they come to school in the fall, their common application is pretty much done. We know where they are with their main essay, and we'll continue to work on that. We start working on supplemental essays and finalizing their college list, and we work by deadline with them. And we communicate all of this with you, and as you have questions, you should never hesitate to reach out to us. Okay? And just a couple of things here. There are some links here we really respect certain college admissions experts in the field, some admissions folks, and some people on our side of the desk as college counselors. So we're going to send this to you tomorrow, but you can certainly write it down as well. There's a class of 2024 college kickoff. We love the people on this panel. Brennan Barnard, I fangirl him. I think he's like the most awesome director of college counseling in the world, other than Mrs. Shaughnessy. And they interact with Q&A. You can ask any questions you want. And it's always helpful to get other perspectives. It's always helpful. We don't own all of the knowledge, but we'd rather you get the information from these folks than your neighbor who had their son or daughter apply 30 years ago and blah. It just, ask the experts. Another one, same group, college costs. So this is some good information about financial literacy for the college process. Another interactive Q&A. And then Davidson College. So Davidson College, Mike Mansui is our admissions person, and we've known him for a number of years. And they've designed this wonderful workshop. And our students get that here, but why not, if they feel like they want some more information to get other perspectives, professional perspectives from an awesome liberal arts college, these are some really great opportunities to attend these workshops. So launching your college search, college application basics, college essay writing, and then college application Q&A. Great sort of jump start in addition to what we offer at Moravian. And again, you might have missed a lot of this. We will send this tomorrow morning as soon as we are able, so that you have this information. Do that a lot. Do it a lot. Take a breath before you say stuff, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Take 5 minutes, take a week, whatever you need to get through this. And we're here. Hopefully we are pressure release valves. I hope we are that. And I hope that students have fun in this process as well, because it's really exciting. I know we just sort of doom and gloomed you a little bit with acceptance rates, but this is fun. It really is fun too. And students actually have a lot of fun writing some of these essays, because they're like, oh yeah, I kind of am awesome. So, Q&A. Oh, boy, we have so many resources, it's insane. So these are links to the article that Mrs. Shaughnessy recommended, and also some really great admissions resources books that you can read, guides and books. So I'm gonna open it up to any questions that you might have. Let me just mention that if you have follow-up questions that are specific to your child that you don't wanna ask in this group setting, please email us, and we're happy to either set up a phone call if it's a longer conversation or just email the question, okay?
So as you mentioned, the last time I went through this process was 6 years ago, before the pandemic. Can you summarize, like, what are the top few changes of the whole environment of college applications and what schools are accepting or not?
Sure, I think that the biggest one is test optional admissions.
Yeah.
It's really changed the landscape quite a bit. It's interesting, so we talk to college admissions officers all the time, and we ask them, number one question we ask is, are you really test optional? Come on. And we get very specific with it, like, who are you really test optional for? Like, what are you doing here? And they say, we are test optional. If you do not send them, we won't wonder why. We just look at everything else. So to some extent, we have to trust that. But we also, as control freaks, think that another data point can be helpful. Think that if a student does score within the range, it's helpful. So that's why we say, prepare for the test, take the tests. If you score within the range, great, we're gonna send them. If you don't, then you're gonna send all the other awesome stuff that explains who you are. So I think that's the main one in the last 6 years, and that's made colleges and universities much more selective because these schools are committing to put what they're saying into action. So, for example, name a school, any school that's test optional now that wasn't before. Duke. Let's go with Duke. So Duke, test optional now, wasn't before. They say they're test optional. They have to show in their statistics that they're admitting test optional students. So maybe 50% or so of the students that they admit applied test optional, 50% sent their scores. That 50% was most likely, that is test optional, was most likely not in the range of admissible test scores in the past. So those students who didn't have a chance before now got a place in the class, from a student that maybe had the scores, right? So that changes the landscape of things. I don't know if I explained that well, but if you're taking 50% of the students that you wouldn't have taken before, then that changes who gets admitted.
One of the things that the University of Miami noted about the test optional process for them is, yes, we 100% truly are. To Mrs. Dubriel's point, one of the things that the admissions person said was, if you're not submitting test scores, when we present you to the committee, something else needs to really stand out, right? So we're losing one data point. So, maybe you have an overemphasis of leadership, or you went all in on a Boy Scout Eagle project, so it's taking something else to the next level to really highlight, I have something else, and this is what, again, I'm going to do, this is how I'm gonna impact, this is what's going to happen, that my grades that I'm presenting, the rigor that I've taken is highlighted along with that I'm certainly admissible because I'm showing 4 years of excellence, but then also I've done this really amazing thing, so you don't need those scores, right? So that was one thing that they said.
So do we have any information on the percentage of people who are applying to these colleges that are going test optional? Like, for instance, at Duke, do we really have a huge cohort of students who are deciding to be test optional, and how does that compare to the people who are submitting scores?
That's a good question, and it's different for every school, but a significant percentage of students are applying test optional. I mean, I don't, some 50-50. I don't know do you have any idea what Lafayette's are?
Right, it was a little over half last year test optional, and this year significantly more test optional.
So, I mean, that's Lafayette, which is highly selective. The most selective schools, we've been seeing somewhat similar. And part of it is because I have a chance now. You know what I mean? You take that out, and a number that, hey, if I have a, 1250 SAT score, I could be admissible at one of these schools that has, that's what people are thinking, that has, that their average is 1550. Typically, what we've seen is a student with a 1250 SAT score that doesn't send their scores is typically not admitted to one of the schools that has those single-digit acceptance rates, because typically other elements of their application don't match that selectivity.
So you talked about the integrity, right? I mean, just as a general thing. And right now, I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've heard a lot about like ChatGPT.
Yes! Oh my gosh!
Impact, right? I mean, people could be writing essays and, I hope not the schoolwork, but that's kind of all the discussion. So kind of, you have to think about it. What are the college admissions, and Susan is here, and are we doing anything to mitigate that?
So it's brand new. I mean, I think I first heard about it in September. And college admissions are a Facebook group that we're part of. They are just chatting about it. They're trying it themselves just to see like what kind of essay. Oh, so the chat, say it again, GPT. So so basically what it is, it's an AI that you can ask it to write an essay about something. Did you see the article that it passed the Penn Wharton grad school exam, MBA exam? Oh my Lord. So it's I mean, part of me is like, wow, that's so cool. And another part of me is like, oh my God, another thing to worry about. So in this cycle, we didn't, our students write so much in front of us that I don't think anybody used it this year. They do a lot of their writing in front of us. Now, with that said, I think some of them didn't write as much of their essays as they should. We saw a little bit of heavy-handedness with people, maybe that, are mature people in their lives that put a little bit too much of their own voice into it, which we know. That's just as bad as ChatGPT, whatever it's called. So I think that this is going to be something that we are talking about this year. English teachers are talking about it, history teachers are talking about it, because it's not, you can't catch somebody for plagiarizing because it's original work, which is really fascinating and scary at the same time. So yes, it's definitely something that we're beginning to discuss and figure out how to manage.
College admissions people are not blind though too. I mean, things have to match, right? So like, if you're a B- English student and now you're writing this paper that's like they're not dumb. Like that's not going to read well. And I'm sure you can talk about time and time again where you saw some of this. So over polishing things, again, this goes back to your authentic voice, authentically sharing who you are. And sometimes that might be, I'm not the best writer in the whole world because my mind is a math STEM kid and I'm an engineer and that's not where my strength is or my interest. That's okay. The right school is going to latch onto you and say, we've got you. So I think that's really important.
The other thing too, I was meeting with a family today and something that this student wrote in their questionnaire, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a college essay. And I won't say what the experience was, but the AI is not going to know that experience. So if she wants to write about that experience, she's going to have to write it herself for it to come alive in her words. So I just think there's some flatness to
So just
that.
because I've been looking up a lot, so I do some tech coordinating for the school. ChatGPT specifically we're looking into, and I can tell you the programs like Turnitin that are looking for plagiarism are already catching up to ChatGPT. They can already detect it. We already have programs that can do that, and some of these AIs are now having to directly report some of what they're writing to it. So the idea that somebody's going to be able to use ChatGPT if colleges are trying to, I don't know what programs they're using, we already have programs that are catching it and turning it down. So I would highly suggest it's probably not a great thing to try to get away with.
Yeah, I think there was a student, a grad student, who came up with something to catch it.
That to
Yeah.
catch it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Because it's, a lot of it is somewhat original the AI is doing, but a lot of it is still pulling stuff offline. So it's still taking stuff that's already written and trying to
Okay,
re-articulate it.
yeah, interesting. Other questions, any other questions? Well, thank you so much for coming this evening. We very much look forward to working with your students. And you know where to reach us as questions arise. And we, we turn over to the junior class and you're our main focus. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for coming this evening.